Grix Affinity is still here to stay and ruining everyone's day. Let's check out why. Hi guys, welcome back to Casting Commons, the show where we talk and discuss all things pauper. I am your host Teasdale, and this is my co-host, the blighted agent himself, Reese.
Hello. Did we not have that last time that we seen these bubbles?
Probably. But it's still totally worth it. It's still that spicy that we have to keep mentioning it. Before we start, please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and follow button so you never miss an upload. It also helps the algorithm and gives us great exposure. Why have I lost the whole flow of everything? But it's a really great way to support us for absolutely free. So please just press it. Just press it now. Go on. What's been happening? Anything exciting happened this week?
Honestly, not really. I played in one of our local Wednesday events, which it was quite a small event, but they generally are smaller on Wednesdays. But got to play some pauper. I ended up playing White Weenie that I've been wanting to play for ages. Yeah, that deck is good. Like, it's impressive how much better Fraven Charm has made that deck. Like, yeah, it just instant speed, point removal plus double sideboard card all in one card is cracked.
Yep.
But yeah, that was fun. I ended up beating Madness, Colgate, and Ponza, and it felt pretty favoured against most of them. It probably felt least favoured against Ponza, but obviously Ponza can just do Ponza things and draw badly, and then you just win. But yeah, it definitely felt like a strong deck. Not surprised it's been doing very well lately. Otherwise, update my EDH decks. That's sort of the extent of the magic. I missed out on the modern FNM because I was doing car stuff, unfortunately, that had to be done. Or fortunately, as modern is pretty miserable right now, so that might have been a blessing in disguise. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to pauper FNM this week and building something hopefully spicy for it.
Hopefully.
Need ideas. Need a poll on what I play for FNM this week.
That's what it is. Just post a poll, see what people say.
What about yourself?
I haven't really done too much this particular weekend. Usually I tend to try and catch up on videos, but I was at a wedding and it was a 3-day wedding, so I've only literally just got back. To be fair, Reese texted me waking me up to come record this right now, so yeah. This is how well this is going. Too many late nights.
Are we still doing the podcast yet? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, so which it was a good weekend, but pauper wise, before we went away, I recorded 2 decks which should be up. Well, one of them should be up, and the other one should be up probably tomorrow when this comes out. So I played Poison Storm, and I'm not gonna lie, I haven't chose which one's coming out today, so that might change. So they're both uploading and ready to go. I just need to press the live button, basically. But I recorded Poison Storm, thinking, there's not really that many blue decks, and there's quite a bit of mid-range. Like, there's only Grix Affinity, which you can sort of win against. So this will be good. And then I versed Mono Blue Fae, I think, Terror, and I was like, oh god, here we go. So, and then just got triple terrored out of everywhere, so...
Yeah. I was going to say that there's not many blue decks, but the blue decks that there are all terror.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of terror.
And it was just... it was also... When I played the previous leagues, like, it was just after we finished recording. So, but when I played the previous leagues that I talked about last episode, there was literally no terror in leagues. There was in challenges, but not really that much. And by the time I had pressed play a match league in Poison Storm, they must have hit that switch for all the terror, and I've just versed an absolute boatload of terror, which then stems quite nicely into on Friday, my wife was away. She was with the bride of the wedding. So once I'd put the little one to bed, I was like, what do I do with myself for the rest of the night? So I was like, I guess I'll stream. So I just literally randomly decided to hit stream and built up a deck based on like what the chat was saying. And it was tied between some. Can't remember the name of the card. It's from the new Modern Horizon set. It's like a green-black ooze that basically you adapt it and it adapts to when it attacks to put counters on stuff.
All right.
And they're like, "Oh, build a deck with this." And I was like, "Well, I could." And then the other suggestion was basically play Affinity with Glee combo in. So I basically just played Bug Affinity. So it was like blue black Affinity sort of thing, splash and green for the combo, the brood scale combo. Yeah. And it was okay, but I think because it was just built there and then and played, I versed 4 terrors, which the sideboard was. I was like, oh, it's when you like build a deck and the first thing you do is, oh, this is a good black card or this is a good blue card. It'll go in a good sideboard. I was like, I ended up with like loads of conflicting cards, so I ended up with like duress plus negates, and I was like, well, it's really awkward to put all of these in against. So you ended up basically just choosing which one you wanted, and you ended up with a lot of sideboard cards I just didn't use. So I don't think that helped. Plus, also, I have seen some people try and 4-color Affinity, like literally just playing the Grix Affinity, splashing green for the lizard. And I think that helps against the Terra matchup because you get Crack on Charm and and Toxin analysis and stuff like that to just really easily clear the board. And I think that's probably what was needed because you just had no real way of killing anything. But it was really fun. I really did enjoy it. The sometimes just having the affinity strength of just here's a bunch of Mirror Forces and having like a brood skill that sort of still goes towards that plan because it's still a body, it's still a guy that attacks and is quite big, and also it does like generally leave a guy behind. It was quite good, but yeah, it was an interesting thing, and I definitely need to stop building a deck on stream because the last 2 times I've streamed, I've built a deck on stream, then played it, and then did terribly because I just misbuild the deck because I'm just like you're reading chat, you're like streaming or like you're thinking about streaming, thinking about talking points, then you're also trying to build a deck, and then you're trying to do that, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't build a deck while someone else is talking to me. Basically, it's just.
Sounds like you need a plan before you're gonna stream, rather than all the impromptu streams.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. But then other than that, I also recorded with mono green tokens too, which was fun.
Sweet.
It was just a changed up version of the black green version that I played previously, but it still had the combo in, so it was technically black green, but it literally was all forests, Colony Garden, and then some like 2 swamps, literally just for statistically. But it was more like aggressive in the slant of having I forgot the name of the card, the 5-mana Convoke, make 3 saplings.
Oh.
At instant speed. I can't,
from Ravnica, yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's
seeds of something.
Scatter the seeds.
Scatter the seeds.
And it was quite thing. I also played a card called Magnify, which I don't know if you've heard of this card, but it's 1 green instant. All creatures get +1/+1. Not even just like including theirs. It's not,
right.
which sounds really bad. But when you go super, super wide and the block 3 guys, you just kamikaze 3 guys, and then it's like, oh, here's my army of 2/2s. It works out quite well. I didn't manage to finish the league, but I did. I was trying something different anyways, trying to make it a bit shorter, a bit more digestible. So I recorded the deck plus a couple of rounds, and I was like, I'll just finish the league later, and that'll do. And just to see how it performs in the YouTube space, because I'm just trying to experiment with like all that sort of stuff. See if the shorter videos really helps with like retention. So which was really interesting. But the deck itself was really fun, and the Magnify was actually really clutch. So
sweet.
Yeah. Spicy.
I suppose it's sort of main board, sideboard card as well, with like against the end of festivities and stuff like that.
Which actually came up against the Madness deck that I versed. So which was quite good.
Sweet.
Yeah. There you go. Exciting times. Me just spinning crap with the brood skill combo and seeing what works.
Yeah. But limited all stars always get you there from Scatter the Seeds to what's the combo one from Future Sight? Sorry, I forgot. Sprout Swarm.
Oh yeah.
That's like the best card in Future Sight for limited. It's still decent in pop.
It's actually the making infinite tapped 1/1s as well came up against one of the
Yes.
which was really good. Yeah.
That was my petition for that card. I was like, yes, but you can just make infinite guys.
Yeah, it was. It did nearly scuff me because, well, more because I was too busy to click. I was like, I'll just make infinite 1/1s anyways. And then when I got to attacks, I was like, crap, it's infinite tapped 1/1s because you have to
Yeah.
use the green. I was like, oh no. But luckily, I had enough green that it was like it didn't scuff me. But I think I killed them on one, so
Nice.
I was like, whoo, nearly dodged that bullet. Yeah. So yeah, it was exciting times. Pauper is fun, and there's definitely a lot of brewing you can do, especially for like leagues and content and stuff. It's Modern Horizons is actually pretty sweet and doesn't seem that breaking for Pauper for a change. It's good. Would you like to move into some news?
Yeah, go for it.
So, not really anything too exciting in the tournament news space. Just generally, there are a few. Well, actually, there's quite a few UK events. If you are interested in them, we do recommend checking out Pauper Dan on Twitter because he retweets them like crazy, so you can see what is coming up and plan your Pauper event goodness in the UK, which is really good to see. We generally tend to, for reference, push the what we I think are going to be the bigger ones, like the Badger and the Northern Pauper Open and stuff. So otherwise, if we shared them all, we'd be here, and that would be the end of the episode because there is a lot. There's quite a few. Pauper is absolutely popping off in the UK for sure. Just another sort of small news update, I guess. After we recorded last week's episode in the Magic Online official Discord, there's like a discussion thing where you can talk about all sorts of stuff. I think one big thing that did happen previously in that Discord, just to show the amount of change, is Bryant Cook mentioned about adding Friday challenges, basically for people that can't play on the weekends due to like family commitments and stuff. So then now they added Friday challenges for basically every format. So they are very open for discussion and up for challenges, and will just change stuff ad hocly. And because of that discussion, in those discussions, the Pauper Sunday challenge is now a 32 and not a 64. I'm assuming it's due to the last one not firing, but you can't really see. It's basically just we'll now change it to a 32.
Yeah, and the last one not firing is such an atypical one because it was the Spain England Euros final.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a shame. I've said it before and I'll say it again. They should just be flexible. Like they need to find a way to make it that a 32 will just change to a 64 if the 64 plays, and vice versa. If
yeah.
a 64 doesn't get 64, it just fires as a 32. Like the fact they can't is it's just ridiculous, really.
Especially in like modern day like programming, unless I can't really see why they shouldn't be able to, like other platforms do it where
Yeah.
it's all scalable
And
based on attendance and stuff like that. I don't understand
and
why they
it's
can't
not
do it.
like the entry fee is any different. Like you're not paying for one or the other. You
Mm.
just like you're paying to enter the event. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
We now have no 64 pauper challenges. They're all
Mm.
just 32s. So I guess they'll sort of have a similar attendance to each other, maybe, rather than more people going for
Mm.
the bigger one. But we will see.
Yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Other than that, we always recommend check out the Trophy Tuesdays. Those have now kicked back off. Now we've got the deck lists over on Kali's channel. Really great way to obviously see if there is anything that's 501 and going to pop into the challenges, like we seen last week with the Green Red Madness deck, which is pretty sweet to see. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And anyways, we will get onto the challenges, I guess.
Yeah, so the Friday 32 challenge, that was on the 26th of July, 52 players. First place was Grixis Affinity, second place was Mono Blue Terror, third was Grixis Affinity, fourth was Blue Black Terror, fifth was Ponzolus, sixth was Grixis Affinity, and seventh and eighth were both Mono Blue Terror. And the near misses, ninth and 10th, were both Grixis Affinity. Um, so yeah, obviously a very, very skewed challenge. Like easily the most skewed challenge we've seen in months now. Um, Affinity is definitely one of, if not the best deck at the moment, and Terra is definitely a nice or a reasonable answer to that deck. So yeah, sort of makes sense, but very, very peculiar to see at the moment. We're used to a top eight filled with different decks, and there's essentially three, sort of four.
Yeah, it is. Definitely this this one in particular is very strange. To be fair, like it's just obviously Grixis and Mono Blue have basically been the top three anyways. So
Mm.
the I think the Friday was Grixis Affinity was the most played deck.
Mm.
Kuldotha was the second most played deck, but it
All
had an
right.
absolutely horrendous time. It had a 40% win rate.
Ouch.
Uh,
Jesus.
and Mono Blue Terror was then the second most played deck, followed by the fourth most played deck, which was actually Demir Terror.
Yeah.
So, which I'm not surprised. Like Terror is pretty good at
Terror be popping off.
pretty much the only thing that's good against Affinity decently. Um, I would say there is obviously I say that's good against Affinity, but also good against quite a lot of the field
Mm.
that can also do that. So I'm not surprised that Mono Blue Terror is obviously still here. I'm surprised that people haven't went and looked to try and hit it out as well, but maybe it's a lot harder to hit that out while also hitting Grix Affinity.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It definitely is a very skewed challenge. The Ponzolus obviously makes sense as well. Like against both Mono Blue Terror and Grixis Affinity,
Mm.
jamming bombs and jamming Cascade bombs is really good. And the whole Ponza package is not that great against Grixis Affinity. It's actively bad against Mono Blue Terror. It's fairly middling. They've got a lot of one mana cantrips to find their other lands. So just removing that and going whole hog on the I'm going to jam bombs every turn I possibly can definitely seems like a reasonable choice as well.
Just for reference, again using Kirby's like spreadsheets, the Ponzolus deck throughout the whole weekend, in terms of Ponza is basically ridiculously high. Like Ponza's like one or two pilots, and
Yeah.
then Ponzolus is basically the red green deck of choice.
Yeah, it's sort
Which
of I
makes
think what we said a couple weeks ago
mm,
that we expected people to once again our takes are usually 2 weeks out of date.
yeah.
That we expected people to switch to this rather than to play the Ponza spells because the land destruction was just looking worse and worse. But yeah, definitely makes sense. Obviously, Modern Horizons 3 making a big statement in this deck, being the main reason it exists.
Yeah, I think this challenge in particular is the only one where they are the same. So there's four pilots in total, 2-2 split on Ponzolus and Ponza. But then
Mm.
like after that, you're looking way up into 2/3 or something higher than the Ponza builds. Because Ponzolus does actually look really good against both of these decks, as you've already said.
Mm.
So hopefully they can keep it up. I still think my big thing on this, which we spoke about last week, is someone really needs to find another card that's not you meeting a tavern. Like,
Still
I
still two copies.
played against it this week as well, in I think twice or something, and even when they were cascading it, I was like, they were playing, and then they're like, I had a massively wide board in multiple, like in I think it was the tokens game or something. I was like, oh, please don't hit a creature, please don't hit a creature, or please don't hit like a breath weapon or something. I think it was post board, and it's like, oh,
Mm.
the hit are you meeting a tavern? I'm just like, okay, this is okay, this is fine now. I'm now like this is. I think they drew 5 cards as well, or 4 cards, and like, I just didn't
Yeah.
care. This is not a problem now. But
Yeah, especially after board when basically everything you bring in is not a creature. It looks a lot worse.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's a weird slot. I'm sort of on board with you with it not being the right slot. Like it seems like a fine choice of card, but yeah, as we've said, it doesn't feel like the perfect choice for that deck.
I do think, and this I think the problem is as well. I'm coming up with a problem, but I have no solution. I can't tell.
Yeah,
Like, I look at this card, and this card looks pretty mid, or if not actively, probably actively bad. But I'm like, why is this even in the deck? And then I'm like, wait, I can't even tell you what to change it to.
yeah,
Yeah, but it is what it is, and it's definitely the deck itself. Like the Ponzolus build is pretty sweet, and cool to see that the sort of writhing chrysalis hasn't died out since Pauper again. If not, it's just still a big menace in the Pauper metagame. Yeah.
I guess looking at the Grixis Affinity decks, the one thing that really stood out to me um, was firstly the lack of Snacker,
Mm.
which we've been saying like since last week or since it come out. Really, just doesn't really fit well in the deck. But also the return of Kenku as like a 2 of mainstay. I think all the lists in the top 8, maybe even, yeah, all the lists in the top 8 played 2. Hamuda's 9th place list plays 1, and then the 10th place list also plays 2 Kenkus.
Yeah,
So just a really big re-up on Kenku.
the Hamuda list, however, does play 2 Snacker as well, though, right?
Yeah, it's the only one that plays
Yeah.
Snacker.
And I think the 2 Kenkus makes so much sense.
Mm.
Because to me, when we're talking about this metagame in general, like the decks that are now the big players that are trying to fight Grixis Affinity, is Terra, which Kenku's great against. Like, obviously they've got potential like Snap or Demon Inferior or all those sort of threats, but that is what it is. But if they don't have those, like having a resolve Kenku or even being able to blood fountain back a Kenku and just have an indestructible guy that's going to block their 5/5s for and 6/5s for days, and then also kill the 3/2 Delvers, like it seems like a really strong card against Terra. But then not only that, you've also got the Ponsless like Riven Chrysalis builds. Like if they want to get aggressive, you just have an indestructible guy that just blocks for days.
I also think that the Demon Inferior doesn't hit the land, right? Because isn't it not non-land?
That might be the case. I will.
Yeah, not non-land permanent. Yeah. Obviously they have boomerangs and stuff, but
Yeah.
like you said, they only have a certain number of those.
Yeah.
And then especially against the blue black lists, it's basically like a stone wall that they can't get through. I guess outside of that, looking at the Terra, the mono blue lists seem to have solidified a bit more. I know last week we seen them and they're sort of all over the place.
Yeah.
These ones seem a lot more sort of in line with each other. There's a lot less like random one-offs. There's a lot less Demon Inferiors. In fact, I think I've seen 1 out of all the lists in the top 10. Yeah, one single Demon Inferior in the main. But mostly just back to like double 4 spike, 4 boomerang type Terra. Nothing particularly stand out. I think one of them is still the weird disrupt build.
Yeah, there was as well. I seen that. Still the same disrupt build. I think it's just it might be the same pilot. To be honest,
yeah, possibly. The other 2 seem very similar. With basically just a Sleep of the Dead and a Demon Inferior as the flex slot between them. And then the blue black Terra is like more like control-y. It's the snacker build with the 4 modern age. So it's a lot more of a skewed, I guess, towards the blue black control rather than skewed towards the blue black Terra side of things.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it doesn't run like it is more like, as you say, a blue black control, because it doesn't run any thought scours or anything that I can see here. It's literally just I'm going to play brainstorm, snuff out, counterspell value, and then have access to Terra plus Snacker plus Modern Age, which I really do like the whole Snacker and Modern Age sort of engine. I've tried it in a couple of decks and it does really work, especially with a bunch of cantrips too. You just have access to just, I don't know, consider, for example, or even preordain after you've modern age and just get back a snacker. Plus, then you have 4 power of flying because you've got 2/3 and a 2/1 flyer. It's been pretty good, but I don't know how much. Looking at this list, I don't know how much better it would be than like the more traditional blue black control decks with the like Murmur Mystic and
Thorn of the Black Rose.
Thorn of the Black Rose.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that sticks out to me, is I don't know how much better that is, because Murmur Mystic to me seems like an absolute house at the minute. But
yeah, I think especially when you're losing the sort of speed aspect of the blue black Terra lists, like that they usually have with the Thought Scours, like Turbo and Outer Terror, you just don't have that. You don't even really have that much discard for the Snacker. I think there's 2 considers and the 4 modern ages and 1 the hardest ploy. That's basically it.
yeah, pretty much.
So it's a full on like slow grindy. I'm gonna cast this Snacker most of the time. Yeah, it's a weird one. It might serve better by having some more of those controlling threats. Maybe even just alongside this package, but
yeah, it is an interesting one in it, because there is as we've seen with the Grix Affinity decks, that the fairer you make Snacker, the generally the worse it is. And the fact that you have very few discard outlets for it seems pretty odd that that's the way that they've ended up taking it. Because you like as you say, you don't even have like you consider you're gonna have to brainstorm to consider it in the bin most of the time.
Mm.
And only having 2 considers in the main seems like an odd choice. If that and Modern Age is effectively like your only real way of getting rid of it, you're genuinely gonna have to waste a turn to play a Snacker, which probably isn't a good thing to do.
Yeah. But yeah, a very, very skewed top 10. As you scroll down, it gets more varied, thankfully. But yeah, I think the last thing on this I wanted to mention was there's a dredge list in 13th that has 3 Ulamog's Crushers in the main deck.
I think we touched on a deck that was similar to this previously, where they'd like had like this sort of weird reanimator package with some Ulamog's Crushers, and I think dredges fell off that much that I don't even know what a normal dredge list looks like now, to be fair. Like, but Crusher seems like I get it to an extent, especially if like Cascade or Ponza or Ponzalus or whatever you want to call it is a deck that's quite high up in the metagame. Like, to me, Crusher seems not that bad. Like, it's bigger than Riving Chrysalis. It stops their mana, it stops them getting a big Riving Chrysalis. So I get the idea behind it. But if that's not the best deck, then turning up with this and then getting Grix Affinity and then they're just, I don't know, Crackling Charm and Toxin Acid, which coincidentally the list in the challenge don't, or even Cast Down, or I don't even know what else. Double Galv Blast, I don't know, whatever. How like it seems a pretty an odd choice.
To be fair, I think in general, like if you just turn to Ulamog's Crusher, Grixis Affinity is gonna struggle to beat that. Like unless it has like a 1 or 2 of Cast Down and has it actively that turn. Like once you attack once, they're not getting through it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the struggle to like assemble the mana in a fast way to like get through it after that as well. Like once it's attacked, and then obviously Ponzalus, if you just or even Ponza, if you just turn to it, like they just die. But it does seem very bad against like Mono Blue Terror. Like you just either your Exhume gets countered by a Disrupt or a Force Spike or a Spell Pierce, or you get your guy back and then they just boomerang it to your hand.
Yeah.
Like or you give them a Terror back and then it gets answered. It doesn't seem great there.
But it also seems like it seems odd if you don't have it turned to as well though. Like say if you even turn or
it's
two
horrendous
late,
if you don't have it turned
like,
to.
Against Cascade, like they've amassed amount of spawns and it doesn't actually matter or whatever.
And
like
then they just block it and it dies.
It seems off. Like, and then to double down on that, they're only running 3 and then 4 exhumes, so that also decreases the likelihood of them having it turned to. It seems like a strange inclusion, but I get the idea behind it. I just feel like you either want to double down and make it your main plan with a backup dredge plan. It seems like a bad backup dredge plan, if that makes sense. Like, if your dredge isn't going to work, I'm going to Ulamog's Crusher Exhume you. Like, it should be the other way around in my eyes. You're like a black-red reanimator deck that has the dredge winning or something, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it sort of goes hand in hand with what you're saying, is that dredge has sort of fell off and hasn't really had anything to update it to bring it back up to pace. Obviously, Coming 13's pretty mega. That might have had a lot to do with turn 2 Ulamog's Crushers. But yeah, I'm not sure where I would go with dredge at the moment, and I guess this is just an attempt to take it somewhere else.
My last thing that I want to touch on, to be fair, is surprisingly the lack of toxin analysis in Affinity in general. I know we've only seen it like once or twice in like lists here and there, and I do think it is actually a good choice with the current metagame. That I do think
I would agree.
That it's a good choice in the mirror, it's a good choice against Ponzalus or Stumpy, it's a good choice against Terra, and a great way to make your Crackling Charm, which is pretty poor in those exact matchups, be really, really good. And there's none even, and I'm surprised that it's not even in sideboards. Like even so, there's a lot of matchups where you'll probably verse Terry. Like, oh well, I guess I'm taking out these Crackland Shamans, or I guess I'm against Stompy. I'm taking out these Crackland Shamans because I can't kill the 6/5s without sacking my board or whatever. Like just having Tox Analysis makes you be able to keep those cards in, and not only they become probably an MVP along with that sort of combo. Yeah, I'm just surprised, to be fair, and that's
Yeah, it's maybe the next step in, I guess, the updating of the Grixis Affinity list. Like we've gone now, we've dropped the whole Snacker Crack. We're back on Kenku's because it's pretty good in those matchups. Maybe the next step is, oh well, we need toxin analysis to shore up this matchup.
Yeah.
Especially if more challenges start to look like that, where it's basically Grixis, Mono Blue Terror, and Ponza or Ponzaless.
Yeah. But just something that I would note there, but pretty interesting. Hopefully it is the next change. We might even see it as the next change moving forward, to be fair. Maybe more than one. There's only one. I just did a quick search. There's only one Tox Analysis deck, which was the 17th place Grixis Affinity that ran 2 in the sideboard. Only deck to run it. Would you like to move into Saturdays?
Yeah. So Saturday the 28th, 47 players. Thankfully, a more interesting top 10. First place was Ponzaless. Second place was Colgate. Third was Grixis Affinity. Fourth was Black Green Glee. Fifth was Blue Red Scred. Sixth was Flickertron. Seventh was Grixis Affinity. Eighth was Elves. And then the two near misses. Ninth was another copy of Blue Red Scred. And 10th was Mono Blue Terror. So yeah, just wildly different to the Friday challenge. Obviously still a couple of Grixis Affinities in there doing really well. But yeah, a massive change from what we have just spoken about.
Yeah, first thing I also would like to also note is the third place Grixis Affinity list is run 2 Toxin Analysis in the main board. Which I definitely didn't miss, but you know, whatever. Which is pretty good to see. It's pretty much a very similar list to what we seen on the Fridays challenge, but ultimately just running 2 Tox Analysis for the 2 Crackland in the main, and there's 1 extra Crackland in the side.
Yeah, and still obviously on the no snacker double Kenku.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool. The other thing I wanted to mention was not only did Ponzaless win, but I also believe this was the same pilot as a top 80 on the Friday.
Yes, I think it was actually. I can't check now because my link's broken.
I will double check.
But yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely this exact same deck list. Either way.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. See.
Also nice to see, as I never thought I'd say this, it's nice to see Colgate. I guess in the change of obviously Ponza moving away to there's no reason that Colgate can't exist again, and I think it probably might. I don't see why it can't. It seems like it has a way to fight against Grixis. It has a way to fight against Terra. Generally, seems like, and then if Ponza builds are not running Ponza effects, seems like a no-brainer because it can deal with the large threats. It can also just make it so none of the large threats really matter with Guardian. Obviously, you've still got the Riven Chrysalis, but if that's the only card that you have to beat when you drop a Guardian, it's not the end of the world. So
yeah, it's I think, as you say, like the shift to Ponzaless rather than Ponza is definitely a big pointer for Colgate coming back. They obviously also got Thraben Charm as a pretty major tool from Mon Horizon 3, which is also coincidentally really good against Terra.
It's definitely not as good in Colgate, I don't think, than say White Weenie, for example. It definitely is a card that is 100% made for White Weenie, but even in Colgate, it's still really good. Yeah. So we might end up seeing more. There wasn't many in the entire weekend of core gates. There was a reference. There was 0 on Friday. 3 on Saturday on today's challenge that we're covering, on the challenge that we're covering. And there was 2 on the Sunday. So still not a big player. Definitely fell off from pre-Modern Horizons for sure. When it was usually fighting for the top deck.
I guess it could be that the results of these challenges with the big shift to Ponzolus is next week we see the rise again of Corgate.
Are you saying our hot takes are always a week out because we're always
Pretty much,
too
pretty
on the
much.
pulse?
The next deck that I was quite hyped to see was Kirby's 8th place Elves list. Obviously, always great to see Elves. But his list just looks really clean. Like, it's not really faffing about with anything. Still on just the 11 draw spells with the 3 distant melodies. And then the only real flex is a 1 of Nyxborn Hydra, a 1 Nettle Sentinel, and a 1 Mass Vandal. But yeah, just a really clean Elves list. And if it's running into a bunch of Ponzolus and Terra, it seems like a good place to be. Not ideal against Grixis Mini.
I just really like the look of the Nyxborn Hydra.
Yeah, it's cool.
Pretty sweet one, to be fair, in Elves. Never really thought about it, to be fair, but seems pretty sweet. And it is definitely a lot cleaner than, was it last week's list with the Copper Pawn dude?
Yeah, come on, Scout or Sentinel or whatever he's called, yeah.
Yeah, pretty sweet. And the obvious deck that I would obviously, well, the 2 decks, the main one is obviously the Glee combo. Can't not comment on the Glee combo. So this is like a black-green Glee combo. This sort of black-green list has sort of been around, to be fair. Like, there's no real exciting changes in that sense. There's nothing that really stands out too much. But the one thing that they have done is they've basically took there's a black-green list that also runs Bloodright Invoker, which it runs it as like a 3 of, where usually the Nightblade versions only run like 1 or 2 Nightblades, where this is sort of taken that the opposite way and just ran 3 Nightblades, which I sort of get behind. I really do like the idea of it. Obviously, just so you have the win right there and then. They are running Evolution Witness as well, which is also another great value piece. But I do think, I still don't know what to think about the 3 WinCon sort of slots. I really don't. I guess with Nightblade it's a bit more awkward because it's interactable. Because you basically combo, make infinite mana, and then you then carry on sacrificing your guy. They have an interaction point where they can kill your WinCon. So having 3 of them sort of makes sense. And you've also got the 4 Tameo Safekeeping to sort of protect it. And 4 Duress, I guess, as well. But like the Bloodright Invoker, if you've got the combo and then you play it, you generally make enough mana before you play it that you can just kill them out right there and then. But I don't know what I think about this list overall. Obviously, it's worked out well. The combo in general, like i.e. the Basque and Brute Scale statistically combo, is actually a really strong combo regardless. So, which I think is why the black-green lists are so different and so hard to come by a unified list, because there's so many different options. Like here, obviously the Eduardo JMP is playing 1 Implement of Ferocity, 1 Energy Refractor, 7 Dispute Effects, 4 Tameo Safekeepings, where some could be running Snakeskin Veil, some could be running no Energy Refractors, some could be running Reckoner's Bargain, or even Fanatical Offering as like the draw spells. There's definitely different ways you can take this, and I think this list is okay. I think the shells generally okay. I think the flex slots is probably a bit questionable.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I sort of like the Nightblade because you can get like a decent bit of chip damage off it with like your Deadly Disputes and your Rumbles and just like your activating your Brood Scales. But yeah, it's obviously one of those where you have to sort of you can't just float a bunch of mana and then play it and kill them. But I guess if you go enough anyway, they're probably gonna die anyway if they had the removal.
Yeah.
It's also probably pretty good against like the more aggressive decks. Like it's a reasonable body against Kuldorfer that also nets you some life. Same for like White Weenie and stuff like that. I think the main thing that I like about this deck more than like the Invoker list that we seen last week is the two witnesses. I think just having a couple of witnesses in there in your creature count just nets you so much value, especially with like the Implementer Ferocity and like spare Glees knocking about and stuff like that. Just being able to buy back a few cards from your graveyard is really good.
Yeah, and that's my thing. I think I personally am a Nightblade fan over the Invoker, but I also do think I think three's too many, and I think I'd sooner run like say 4 witnesses before I run the third copy of Nightblade.
Yeah.
Because Evolution Witness just literally surprise carries a lot of matchups. Just being able to get you or get people.
I guess the inclusion of the witnesses as well would have probably skewed me on Snakeskin rather than safekeeping. Just because being able to just stick a counter on it and buy back some at whatever you want, even like other like Snakeskin Veils and stuff like that, and just like loop them. It just seems like worthwhile having in your deck.
Yeah, I think I was very much a big fan of safekeeping when Ponza was everywhere, but now everything's not really Ponza, or there's nothing really tying your land. Like I think it's probably Snakes in Veil seems like the better choice, but I guess if you're expecting a lot of say a white weenie and you think that there's a lot of Thraben charms that are going to hit you sadistically, then I guess safekeeping. But most of the time, pretty much anything that Thraben charm can hit is gonna kill your Brood Scale anyways.
Yeah. And if it blows up the Glee, if you've got a Snakeskin Veil, you can just buy it back with the Evolution Witness anyway.
Yeah. True enough.
But yeah, it's sweet. I enjoy seeing how these black-green Glee decks evolve.
And there's definitely a lot of different ways to take it. And there's not really two. I think that's one thing that hasn't changed in most black-green lists is the sideboards all look almost identical. Like they always have like the same 5 cards in, they're just numbers are different.
Yeah.
The other thing to touch on that I would like to mention is that our Clint 21 is back.
Yeah.
And with
on Tron, as always.
And I don't really think anything's changed, right? But since I last seen him, he was playing Conduit. Was he playing Conduit Pan last time he made an appearance in the challenge?
I think so, yeah. There's no Modern Horizons cards in.
No.
Seems like, Flickertron. Doing Flickertron things. I never really understand what these teaching decks are doing. Like, I get the teachings for one-offs.
Yeah.
But I could never come up with these numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's obviously sweet to see a Tron deck back. It's probably been quite a while since we've actually seen Tron competing. It was maybe that mono red Tron like a month or so ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Great to see a different deck competing in the top 8.
I wonder if there is any Modern Horizons 3 cards you could actually put in here. Like I can't even remember what's in there. I'm thinking, oh, this card should be in here, but the deck literally looks the exact same like it did probably like 4 years ago, by the one Conjure Pylon. I guess Runaway Boulder's quite new.
Yeah.
But yeah, great to see. I guess I'm actually quite happy that even though I hate Flickertron when I'm sitting down opposite it, I'm quite glad that Power Plant and Tower have not been removed from the format.
Yeah, it's nice it's there. I guess this might be another sort of lean into the Ponza is dying back and the Ponza list is taking over, where your Tron lands are now less under threat to turn 2 blow it up, turn 2 blow it up.
Yep.
Anything else, or do you want to move on?
I guess I just want to nod to Spock for obviously still tearing up with Blue Red Scred, still on his Augurless build, and someone also wanted to try and imitate them, but playing his old list with Augur in 9th.
Yeah.
I guess is still cool, deck's still strong. Blue Red is definitely a stronger deck than it actually gets credit for sure.
I'm not really sure how to feel about Blue Red Scred in this format, to be honest. Like, does it shine in the Terra mirror, maybe?
I think my main thing about the deck is pretty much, bar to Bogles, it pretty much has like a 55-45 against every deck in the field, it feels like.
Yeah.
And I think someone like Spock obviously can lean into that 55 and turn that into maybe a 65 based on his format knowledge and know what to keep and know what cards and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. But I do think the deck is pretty much, it's like Pauper Jund almost. It literally is almost like 50-50 every matchup and you're playing on hard mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just my last point to touch on is the fact that the second most played deck on Saturday was the most played deck on Saturday was Mono Blue Terror with 10 pilots. So it took
Makes
over
sense.
Grixis Affinity, and yeah, that was pretty much it. They took over Affinity, and White Weenie was also quite high up with 4 pilots. Third most played deck.
Yeah, I think there was a White Weenie in 11th, so only just missed out on our top 10.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Moving
it for
on.
me. Yeah, fire away.
So the Sunday, now a 32 challenge, which is a shame.
What?
Played with 64 players, so could have been a 64 challenge for. Yeah, first place was Bogles, second place White Weenie, third Grixis Affinity, fourth Kuldotha, fifth Grixis Affinity, sixth Blue Black Terror, seventh Black Green Gardens, and eighth Ponzulus. And then the 2 near misses, Black Green Glee and 10th Kuldotha.
Woo!
Obviously always big hype when there's Bogles in first.
Mm.
Soft spot for Bogles. It was the weird Bogles list with the infect sideboard that we've mentioned before.
Mm.
I say weird Bogles list. Like the actual list is just Bogles, like it's pretty solid. Just the sideboard's a bit weird with the infect of 4 Blighted Edge and 4 Glistener Elf and an island.
I guess the only thing to touch on is that the previous one, I don't know if it was the same pilot or not. Probably is, because which psychopath's going to put Blighted Edge in the sideboard of Bogles? But they ran the landscape right last time. They ran the ban
Yeah,
landscape where they're running Ash
yeah.
Barons this time. That's about as the only difference really.
I guess against the Ponzolus decks, the Blighted Agent actually looks really good. Um, or it looks really good for one game. Like the sideboard isn't really conducive for them bringing anything in. Like they could maybe hedge with a breath weapon, but it seems bold against Bogles. And then they're not going to bring in 2 casting at the fires like normally.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you get one game out of the Blighted Agent. The Glistener Elf I just still think's a bit odd.
Yeah, it does seem odd to me as well. Like, especially, I could also sort of maybe understand if you were against like a combo deck where they're not going to have any really interaction with you anyways, so it doesn't matter if your guy's a hexproof. So you might as well get the guy that's hits for half the amount of damage. But they're not really that prevalent, so it does seem rather odd.
Yeah. The next list that I wanted to touch on was the blue-black. I've called it blue-black terror list. It's sort of blue-black terror. It's sort of blue-black control. Pilot is Darkest Mage, which is Michael Jacob, who I can always remember sitting at Teasdale's mum's kitchen table when we were like 15 watching Michael Jacob streams. So it's really, really sweet to see him playing some pauper. And his list is quite interesting. It's sort of like a blue-black terror list, but then has Modern Age and Thorn of the Black Rose and Spellbomb in the main. It also has red in the sideboard for a couple of Pyroblasts and Gorilla Shamans.
Which I do like. I like the change on this. I haven't put them side by side because Michael Jacobs played in the Creator Showdown for the first week of Modern Horizons 3, and he played a similar sort of list where he played like Snacker, Terror, Modern Age, and then sort of like a still sort of terror-y game plan. And I don't know how much this deck has changed too much. I don't think, from memory, I don't think it had the red in the side. So that seems like the most likely change. But I still think it was Terra-esque with the Thought Scour's sort of mill effects, like self-mill effects, where the previous one on the Friday didn't.
Yeah.
But
it seems fairly set up well to beat at least the mono blue terrors. Obviously main board with the Nihil spell bombs. and the snuff outs, but then after sideboard going up on Pyroblast, having access to Pyroblast as well in that
Yeah.
matchup just seems like a game breaker.
Pretty interesting
Yeah,
list. And the only
yeah,
thing that I
really
think
cool.
find really odd is both lists had an agony warp in. And I feel like that's just sort of a leftover from like blue black. I don't think it's really needed in this current meta game. Like it might in a couple of weeks' time, but
Yeah.
I feel like the only reason it's there is to deal with Guardian, and I feel like you could just have a better removal spell. Like a cast down probably seems better.
Yeah, I think in these lists in general now as well, like you just have infinite blockers for the Guardian, right? With
Yeah,
this with the
with the snacker.
snackers. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you just chain snackers.
Mm.
So you maybe don't even need Agony Warp at all, even if Colgate comes if he comes back in force, like it's probably worth having, but if it's just sort of here and there, it's gonna be represented but not in mass numbers. Like you've now just got infinite blockers where you had basically no interaction before.
You know what they
But
could
yeah,
do? Toxin analysis.
on your sneaky snacker and block it.
There you go. Look at that.
But yeah, it's definitely a cool one. A bit different from the blue black more control versions, given it's still on 4 thought scours, which is usually the first thing to go. So it still has that like bonus plan of like speedy terror and also like mill snackers fast. Yeah, it's sweet.
Main thing that excites me, is, as you've already said, is Michael Jacobs obviously not only was in the Creator Showdown playing pauper, which was also always great to see. The fact that when quote unquote there isn't any money on the line in the sense of a big tournament, he's still rocking up in challenges and still doing really well.
Yeah,
like that's really exciting, and really what I also like about this Magic Online Creator program is they've now been shown this format. He might, to me, I look at this, I think he's been now had access to this format because of the showdown, and then he's fell in love with the format, similar to like Will Hall with Paupergeddon, and they've just fell in love, and now they're here, and that is because it is literally, as people have said, this is the most balanced format to me, and at the moment, and it's great to see that people are just, I'm gonna develop this deck and see what comes out of it, and they've obviously built a really sweet deck with sweet sideboard cards, sweet list in general, and it's just cool to see. What was the other thing the one thing that I want to mention is the gardens.
Yeah,
it is here. I expected it more, to be honest. There wasn't many gardens lists over the entire weekend. I think like literally like 5 or something. Which has surprised me, to be honest. But I guess you got the matchup lottery. I think if you're gonna verse something like Affinity, you can struggle. It's not like an easy matchup for Gardens. It's very much a slugfest. Terror obviously seems, as most people know, it's a pretty good matchup.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see how it fares against the rest of the field. I'm pretty out of touch in Gardens in general. So I imagine it's got a really good Ponzaless matchup. I can't imagine it's a deck that does particularly well against the Ponza builds.
Yeah, it's a odd one with Ponzaless because they just now have so many guys. Like, are you going to have enough removal to kill them all?
My idea is probably yes. But
assuming they play in a reasonable manner, like not just jacking up the board with a bunch of stuff for you to crit rats away. Like if they're just like board and party into a guy and then that's it until you answer it, and then they're like all the sword into a guy, I imagine it gets tough because you obviously don't have the fastest clock as well.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is the fact that your threat and your new threat and your new draw spell produces a spawn. So previously, Ponza wasn't that bad because the only sort of floating card that was annoyingly got in the way was an Arbor Elf. Where now you've got spawns galore. Like some of them,
so all the Tithe and Blades are basically dead.
So all the Tithe and Blades are basically dead. So you've almost lost 4 Tithe and Blades, and then the only way you can sort of do that is then you've now got to get into the later game where you crit rats 4 out of the 5 threats away, and then you Tithe and Blade the last one, for example. Yeah. And it just gets awkward. So you've effectively, you might be right looking at this that it might be too awkward for them now. Like obviously they haven't got Ponza to sort of, like the Ponza stuff to sort of ruin your game, because that happens a lot. Like this deck, you can see, well, you can't, but Reese can see, there are 18 lands.
Mm.
And two trolls, so they're on like 20 lands. Like, it's not that many for a deck like Gardens, where they literally want to never miss a land drop.
Yeah.
Um, so it was quite common that you just folded to Ponza, but you might be right in the fact that you'll struggle with removal, especially with some of them being like either edicts or number based, like Defile. Like you could get to a point where you're staring at this Defile, it arrive in Chrysalis, and you don't have enough swamps. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, because I guess essentially you've got the forecast downs, 4 Defile, assuming it's big enough, and 2 Snuff Outs and 2 Spinning Darkness, assuming they're big enough. So what's that? 4, 8, 12 removal spells, and they've got probably 24 creatures you care about.
Yep.
And now Malevolent Rumbles and your meter taverns to like draw back up on the creatures.
Yeah, I was.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that actually goes now.
I was just about to say as well, if I was to verse any deck where I was looking at this Ponzless deck and thinking, do you know what, this Umina Tavern looks cool, Gardens is probably that deck.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I guess the only other thing is that you've got Crypt Rats and sort of Blood Fountain
Yeah.
effects where you're hoping that that sort of carries it, but you've also got Thorn too as well. Like it probably is a much more close and interesting matchup than it previously was, to be fair.
Mm.
So it'd be interesting to see how Gardens would actually fare in the meta game, especially if they can figure out the Affinity matchup, which is all to me is gonna be a tough one. I think most of my Affinity wins playing Gardens previously before Refurb Familiar was you basically removed everything and then try to spell bomb or Bajuka bug their threats to get rid of the Blood Fountain. And after that, it's a struggle. If you don't hit the right threats with the spell bombs and Bajuka bugs, you end up getting folded because you don't have enough removal.
I think the last couple of decks I want to touch on are just these Kuldotha lists. Obviously, been quite a long time since we've seen Kuldotha, or at least seen Kuldotha doing well. The fourth place one has a mainboard Gorilla Shaman, which is quite worrying that's a thing. Hopefully that's not necessary and we don't see more of those because that's a bad sign. But yeah, they seem fairly flex heavy now compared to the Kuldotha of old. Like I said, this one has a Gorilla Shaman. It also has a 1-of Fire Blast and a 1-of Goblin Grenade. This has basically come at the expense of the Chain Lightnings and now down. And then I think it was it 11th place? The 10th place one is sort of in a similar vein where the Chain Lightnings are gone. This one's a 4 lackey build, so it's pretty high on the creatures. But still runs a 1-of Fire Blast and is back on 2 Sealer Fires. Again, at the expense of the Chain Lightnings.
One thing that I've noticed with these lists, or Kuldotha in general, is Raze seems to be back in full force.
Yeah.
Which I really do like. I think it's a great call for like the Ponzless builds, like anything with Utopia Sprawl. It just generally seems like a good call. And also like lack of blue decks where you really care about that. Like to me, if you were going to see a control deck now, it's probably going to be something like Gardens or Scred, which you could actually utilize cutting them off colors quite easily. Which I like.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the Raze in general. It seems like a great position, obviously mainly for the Sprawl Arbor Elf sort of decks. So
I think especially like you say, there's the Ponza list has switched now to basically 4 Wild Growth, 4 Sprawls. So it's really susceptible to Raze. As that's essentially the main mana engine. Like the Arbor Elf's not surviving against Kuldotha, like it's just gonna die. So their main mana advantage is going to be off these. If you can cut that off, like you've got plenty of time to kill them.
For sure. Yeah, and that was the main thing that I found from cutting the main thing from these lists. I guess I hope I see more Tox Analysis. I genuinely do. I think that card is actually surprisingly well positioned right now. Yeah, pretty sweet challenges to be fair.
Yeah, obviously the Friday being a bit of an outlier and a bit of a hopefully this is not what Pauper looks like, but then obviously the Saturday and the Sunday are both bringing it back to this spice and a variety that we are used to.
Yeah. I hope we do find more. There's definitely is. It still is. There's a lot of room to like brew, and even in actual decks that are settled, like you can still tune them. But then I do
Yeah.
think there's a lot of space for wild and wacky brews like we seen last week. So hopefully we do have some more decks that just get spicy in there. To be fair,
Mm.
um, yeah. I think like another thing that unless you look at Kirby's data, you don't really notice. Without staring at like the stuff like the Ruby Storm that Callie's been playing, like the Grill Storm, like that someone played that in a challenge, and I'm assuming it wasn't Callie. But there's all sorts of different decks. Like obviously Elves, Trons still back. Like obviously it made an appearance. It's definitely you can whatever you want to play and you know the deck, you can definitely do well with it. For sure. Sweet format. Anything else?
No, that's it from me.
Just quick shout outs. Obviously, shout outs to everyone that we mentioned previously. Shout out to Kirby for obviously giving us access to this data, which you can follow him on Twitter if you are interested in following that as well. Posts basically each day, the Friday, the Saturday, Sunday, like the decks, and then once a month does a video on the decks in that meta game and their win rates based on the challenges, which is really interesting. Um, so yeah, shout out to him for the all that grind, and then shout out obviously all the content creators and grinders that are obviously making these fun and interesting. Specific shout out to Michael James for getting into the greatest form of all time. Would you like to move on to hot takes?
Yes. So hot takes from last week. Mine are really bad.
Mm.
My first one was that White Weenie would have another great show next week, featuring in all three of the top tens. There was it was only one, unfortunately.
I think generally we had a pretty bad weekend, but as a whole, but I think that also means we had a great. We'll have a great next weekend because these will be right. That's generally what happens. Mine thought was that Gardens will be the most played deck to fight the current field. That did not happen or come nowhere close. I actually think there was five Gardens played in the all weekend.
Ouch.
Yeah.
At least I was somewhere near. Like people were playing White Weenie. It just didn't convert very well.
Well, to be fair, I'm lying to you. The Sunday it was the third most played. It was the fourth most played day actually. To be fair, sorry, I missed Sunday. There was 7 pilots playing Golgari Gardens, but it had a 36% win rate.
Ooh,
Maybe Gardens sucks.
that's severe, isn't it? My second hot take from last week was that Mono Blue Terror will be hated out, appearing in one or fewer top tens. So basically, my takes were actually backwards. Like White Weenie secretly got hated out and appeared in one top ten,
Mm.
and Mono Blue Terror or Terror in general was in two or three if you include Blue Black Terror in all the top tens. So I'll take a. I'm completely backwards and got them both wrong.
I don't have my Uno reverse card on us,
No.
but oh well. You know, we sometimes we get things wrong. You know, us gurus of the format clearly can't be right all the time. My last hot take was that Corgate will take an uptick to fight the non-Ponza meta, and yeah, it was actually nowhere close.
No, it's one that I think will uptick next week just because of the fact like you see it come second there. So people start to look at it and think, oh, well, all these Ponza decks aren't running any land destruction. Maybe it's time to jump back on it.
See, this is I was getting confused. You see, because Corgate had 5 pilots over the entire weekend. It wasn't featured at all on Friday by looks of it. It had 3 pilots on Saturday and 2 on Sunday.
Mm.
Everyone's still scared of the thermocasting, but
To be fair as well, though, like Colgate was never that big on pilots anyway. Like
no.
5 doesn't seem out of the ordinary for like Colgate at its peak being the best deck.
Yeah. It was a bit, to be fair, Colgate is a strange one. It's been the best deck for, like, pre-Modern Horizons 3. It was the best deck for probably quite a while. Had almost, like, 2 pilots who was, like, Carrot Eater and someone else
Yeah.
for ages. And then I'd probably say, like, the last 3 weeks before Modern Horizons 3, everyone was, like, just on Colgate, and it was, like, fighting for the best deck and the most played deck, and it was like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden, obviously, Modern Horizons 3 comes out, and it just disappears. Yeah. Right, moving to hot takes for next week.
Yeah. My first one is that Cult Author will spike again. I haven't put any numbers to that. I'm not sure why, but I expect we'll see it in at least two of the top eight. It's sort of a deck that now ebbs and flows. It used to obviously just be an ever-present deck. I think those times are well behind us, but I do think it should probably have a good week next week.
One thing that I was definitely I was going to write, and I did delete for another hot take because I thought it was spicier, was that I think Madness might make a return, because we've obviously seen since Pauper Again's win, it's sort of like slowly become like a not very represented deck, and the deck seems really strong right now. That I wouldn't be surprised if that comes back as an aggro deck as well. Just as a,
I think Madness is one of those where everyone looked at it and just thought, all right, this is the next aggro deck of choice. It's good against most of the field, but it's like surprisingly awkward to play well.
Yeah,
like it's quite a difficult deck to play well. So if people are just jumping on it thinking, oh, this is the new next best thing, and then don't perform with it, the numbers just tail off.
Yeah, it's definitely got a higher ground, higher ceiling than Cult Author has in general. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's
higher floor and higher ceiling.
Yeah, so it's been it's definitely like I can't play to save my life. I always that deck's too hard for me. It's too big brain for my liking. But yeah. My next hot take is Blue Black Fair will make a return.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, indeed, and I don't know why. I just look at this metagame. I'm like, I'm sure Blue Black Fair, or I'm sure Baco can annihilate this metagame with Blue Black Fair. Is how I'm looking at this. So
yeah, my initial thought was it doesn't really line up that great against Ponzolus or Affinity or Mono Blue Terror, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably
that's mainly just my thinking. Spellstutter Sprite is bad against all these decks more than anything.
I think you might be right. But I also do think it seems like a deck it's very much like Blue Red Scred. It's very much on the line of you have to try and outskill your opponent or draw well. And yeah, I feel like it's probably the deck that can definitely still get there. Like obviously just cutting them off the mana with the Spellstutter Sprite for like Ponza, and you do have sort of tools to beat Terror if you need to.
Yeah.
I imagine Grixis Affinity is probably a bit. It's a bit like it is, you know what I mean? Those two decks are probably gonna go to loggerheads, but I don't know. I feel like it could be a time for it to make it return.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned there, Baco in particular, it's a deck where a pilot can make a big difference, which might make your hot take reasonable. My last one is that Dust to Dust decks, as a generality, will return. So your White Weenie, your Colgate, White Black Blade doesn't seem the worst at the moment. Obviously not great against Ponzolus, but pretty strong against Mono Blue Terror. And then you've got the Dust to Dust inevitability against Affinity.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was Mardu as well, just to keep that in the conversation. I wouldn't be surprised. I've seen since Gavin's obviously mental run at Pop again, you keep seeing and also Snapbolt's doing really well in leagues with like a black-white sort of wildfirey, bladey refurb deck. So I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of makes an appearance. My last one is that non-Glee combo decks will top 10 all the events next weekend. I'm going big or going home.
Old.
So that's, like the farms, the tribe, the goblin combo, whatever you want to. Anything. Just anything that's not Glee. I think all the combo pilots are all just forgetting there's other combos in the format.
I think, to be fair, what we could definitely see is Tyrube on Cycle Storm.
Yeah.
Making a return to some top eights. That's a pretty easy add into that combo pile.
But I also think a lot of those decks struggle with the Ponza sort of packages as well. So, like FAMs in particular, which seems to be on the downtrend. So, I won't be surprised if they sort of, similar to Colgate, sort of I can make a return now. Now we're here.
Yeah, sick.
That's what I'm hoping. More Mogwarts in top 10s, please. Anything else to add?
No, that's it from me.
Thank you all for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please don't forget to share it with your friends, your family, your local pauper community, and even your local plumber. Just make sure you pay the bill. We've all seen those videos. And that is all from us at Casting Commons. Until next time, and don't forget to stay hydrated. Peace.
Bye.